The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting groups. If you'd like to produce a show, call us at 260-421-1250.
Hello, and welcome to the American Veteran. My name is Dale Parrish. I'll be your host, and my co-host today is Bud Mendenhall. Today's topic should be of interest to any veteran that served in Korea. The topic was going to be the Korean War Veterans Association. Any veteran that served before, during, or after the war is welcome to the organization. Our guest today is Ken Roemke and Carl Fowler. Ken is the commander of the Korean War Veterans Organization, Indiana Chapter 1, right here in Fort Wayne. Carl is the second vice commander of Chapter 1. Before we get started with the program, Bud has a couple comments he'd like to make.
Even though we're talking about Korean veterans today, veterans of all wars and veterans in peacetime will be featured in the future programs. Any veteran interested in being on our show to tell their story can contact us by email at americanveterans@frontier.com. That's americanveterans@frontier.com. We will get back to you then. The email address will be shown at the end of the program.
Carl, let's start with you.
Okay.
Why don't you give us a short history of the KWVA?
Well, the Korean War Veterans Association was basically started at a watch fire attended by some of the Korean vets. I think there was about 7 or 8 at the watch fire, and they decided to stick together afterwards. So this was in 1989. So they checked around and they found that there was a national Korean War Veterans Association. So they put in an application to form a chapter, which they did, and they got their charter in July of 1989.
And it took off from there.
Oh yes, it grew each year. It kept adding members and adding members. They kept outgrowing some of their places that they were holding their meetings, had to change every once in a while, and increased to their present membership today, which is quite huge.
Do you know how many? Approximately how many?
Approximately 150 people are in the Korean War Veterans Association, Indiana Chapter 1.
Oh, yeah. But the national, I mean...
no, I don't have a
figure.
figure.
18,000?
It's in the thousands.
Yeah,
yes,
I think
many
it was
thousands.
300 and some chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Ken, why don't you give us a little bit of information about our own chapter?
Well, I guess if you'd want to classify us, you'd have to say that we're a group, a socialized group with a purpose. Carl will get into the social part later. Our purpose is to never forget the over 54,000 that never returned from Korea, and the over 8,000 POWs and MIAs that still are unaccounted for. That will always be our purpose. Our group is operated by an executive board. We have a commander, first, second, vice, secretary, treasurer, 3 elected trustees. And our past president has a vote, as does our judge advocate. those members make up the voting and run the chapter with the approval of the general body. Besides the elected members, we have a chaplain who opens and closes each meeting with a prayer. We have a memorial brick chairman. We have public relations, entertainment, newsletter, historian, Telemerica, Veterans Administration, Honor Guard. So we're all covered. But I'll tell you who makes up that chapter, and that's the 50 to 55 members that attend every meeting every month. As good as the officers are, they'd be awful lonely talking to themselves. So we certainly appreciate not only the 55 members, but the ladies that back their husbands, and
Exactly.
we have a number of widows also that are still very active.
Yeah. Do you have anything, Ken, or Bud?
Well, I'd like to talk a little about the newsletter we have. I'm sort of partial to that because my wife does it, but I think that has helped our chapter quite a bit.
Oh,
I
that's
mean, people are
great.
anxious to get
Yeah.
in.
It's a way for the shut-ins to keep in
Right,
contact.
to keep in touch.
Yeah,
Widows.
definitely.
I think it's a pretty good newsletter.
It is.
And I think everybody enjoys it. So that's,
I look forward to it.
that's me too. And
Yeah.
it's quite good.
Well, what's the eligibility?
Well, actually, there's 3 periods of eligibility. Right after World War II, we occupied South Korea. So from September the 3rd of 1945 until June 25 of 1950, anybody that served as an occupational force is eligible to join. And then from June 25th, 1950 to January 31st of 55, anyone that was in service, regardless of where you were stationed, stateside, Europe, wherever, you're eligible to join. And after that date, why, anybody that has served in Korea, occupation forces, up to the date are eligible, and they are considered Korean Service War veterans. And we have a number of those. In fact, our last member that just joined was one of those service veterans.
I think the word has to get out. I think a lot of service veterans don't know that they're eligible.
Well, that's probably true.
Let's get back to the Telemerica. What do you feel is the importance of the Telemerica?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the lack of the Korean War in history books. If we don't go out and tell the children, the younger generation, what's going on, it'll be lost. You'd be surprised at how many teachers are not even aware of the Korean War. Maybe they had a grandfather or somebody in the war, and they may know a little bit about it. But normally, the teachers don't know a thing.
Yeah. You know, I get kind of angry when I hear somebody talking about the wars America was in, World War II, or World War I, World War II, Vietnam.
Yeah, they skip us.
They skip right over there.
A couple of years ago, I think was our best year, we contacted over 7,000 students in 13 schools. And
That's great.
no, I got to tell you about one. It happened on Veterans Day. We were invited to an elementary school. So you kind of gear your program to that. But that day we were more the honored guests than the participants. And the younger children had memorized patriotic songs. And they marched around the gym and they waved their flags. And several days later, I received a phone call from a friend of mine. He says, my youngest granddaughter was involved in that, and she was so excited. She says, but Grandpa, there's one thing that bothers me. How did those men fight? They were all so old.
Yeah.
Well, I traveled the city about 800 miles month and hit different accounts and things. And I work outside, sometime, and I wear my hat so my bald head don't get cold. And when I wear my Korean War veteran hat, it amazes me how many people come up and shake my hand. And they're hearing more about it with the Tell America program. I talk to my neighbors, have said things to me. I talk to kids, and I think it's really helped.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of our purposes, is to keep the story of the Korean War out in front of the people so they don't forget it. Yeah. So it's not a forgotten war. Yeah.
What's some of the other activities, Carl?
Well, we've marched in lots of parades. We've traveled the country over by bus. The bus will hold 30 so people at a time. So we've traveled around to some of the battlefields. We've been to Washington on about 5 different trips. Visited all the memorials, all the military stuff there, Fort Myer, and of course the cemetery, and so forth. So we're interested in what the veterans have played in that role. Yeah. So in 1990, the Vietnam vets invited us to march in a parade with them, and we accepted them. And we've had about 5 vets march in that first parade that we participated in. And we've been thankful to the Vietnam vets ever since for getting us started in parades. And I think we've been in every parade in Fort Wayne since then. I think we maybe skipped 2 because of bad weather and so forth. But other than that, we're very active in parades.
Ken, you want to talk about the Honor Guard?
Well, I want to tell you about parade first.
Okay, sure.
Our parade chairman, Gary, has a very good Army buddy in Cromwell, Indiana. And when Roger found that out, he asked Gary if they'd be interested in bringing the parade up to Cromwell. And Gary says, well, I'll run it by the group and see what they think. Well, naturally, if Gary was for it, we were too. So when Roger got back with him, it just so happened we were in Washington on one of those bus trips. So he relayed all the information to him in Washington. A couple of days after the parade, it went off without a hitch, and people from Cromwell stopped Roger and they said, well, how in the heck did you get those guys from Fort Wayne to come up here? And Roger says, well, I got this friend in Washington, I called him, and he set up everything. So, and he might have been stretching the truth a little bit.
That was good.
I think that's one thing about our chapter. We have lots of fun together, and we really enjoy it, and we kid around and so forth, but we give a little and we take a little.
Even though there's Navy veterans and
we cover all branches. We got them all covered in our chapter.
I had to get that in for Bud.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
He's got some backing, though. One story about the group. When we went to the state meetings, we were the only chapter at that time that had women involved. And they were so surprised that our wives were so actively involved in our group and supported us. So, and that's certainly one thing we appreciate.
We couldn't get along without the women.
No.
They back us more than 100%.
They do a lot for a chapter.
They sure do.
Yeah. Oh, the Honor Guard.
Well, the Honor Guard, unfortunately, we just had a chance to use it here a few weeks ago. One of our members is deceased, and one of his last requests was that we honor him. And so our chaplain and our Honor Guard, Gary, they get the fellows together. We march in as a group at the calling. The chaplain leads us in prayer. We salute the flag. We salute our deceased brother. And then 2 members will stand honor guard at each end of the casket, and then we switch off. And So that's
It's
pretty well.
impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, so we used to do the rifle, the firing at the graveside, but we got a little too old for that, so, and the weather, we get
Yeah.
caught out in the winter, and
I think the Honor Guard does an excellent job of honoring those people that have passed on before us, that have served, We respect that.
Yeah. The Koreans in the community, I think, appreciate the Korean War veterans.
Very much so, very much so. Every year, on a Sunday before Thanksgiving, they invite us to the First Presbyterian Church downtown, where they have their services, to attend with them and to have a nice dinner afterwards, and just have some good fellowship,
Yeah.
which we do, and we really enjoy it. We get together with them on some of the parades. They've dressed in their native uniforms, costumes, if you would, and march with us, and they come to our picnics on occasion, and all in all, we've just shared a good camaraderie with them, and they've shown us so much respect. You just have to love them. That's all there is to
Yeah,
it.
you're right. You're right. And yeah, you mentioned the picnics. So we reciprocate and invite them to our summer picnic.
Sure.
Yeah.
I might add that during when they marched in the parade with us that day, the Three Rivers Parade,
Yeah.
that we won third place.
Yeah.
Got a trophy.
Yeah.
for it.
They're very colorful in their
Yeah.
clothes and that.
Yeah, I hear about I don't join too many of the parades, but they usually win something.
When they march, they win.
Yeah.
They're good.
I'm talking about our,
Yeah.
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 Oh, you want to cover the Korean War Memorial out here on O'Day Road? I think
Well-
there's a lot of people don't know about that.
I'll let Carl, he's a little more familiar with that.
Okay.
He worked out there quite a bit, so.
Okay. During 1992, we had a group that was looking to get the memorial going, and we had a donation of $300. That was our first big cash amount towards the memorial. The Korean embassy in Chicago donated one of their flags to us. So the movement just kept growing, and they got some money up to buy the stone. And that stone was furnished by John Lay Memorials, and design was by Tom Daly and his son Kevin. In May 1995, ground was broken for that memorial, and it sits out there on O'Day Road in the memorial grounds. Excuse me. And it's a very impressive looking stone.
Yeah, I think so. I think
We've set it up now, so it's being taken care of perpetually. And if you ever drive out there and see it, and I know we've all seen it many times, and we're awed a little bit each time we see it for what it represents.
I like to stop out there every once in a while. Just
Right, me too.
that brick walkway is something else too. You want to talk about that?
Okay, they started putting in bricks, and this was before my time, but they have a brick walkway there. It's a memorial walkway where they engrave the names or service dates and branch of service, so on bricks, and individuals can buy a brick and have it installed there. And we have quite a few bricks out there now. I don't know the number.
I don't
1,000?
either. Well, I'm probably pushing that.
Yeah.
How many?
Probably pushing 1,000 bricks there.
Yeah, I'm
And it's growing every year,
yeah.
so there's always more bricks. We're going to have to expand it someday, because we're running out of bricks in its present form.
Well, they hold. Sometimes they'll hold a picnic out there too, or they have their watch. What do they call it? The watch.
Watch fire.
Watch fire out there.
Yeah. The they do have a pavilion out there where we have our picnics. It's under roof and so forth, cement slab out there, and that's always a nice place to gather because even if the weather gets bad, why, you're still under roof.
Yeah.
And so we had quite a few picnics out there and really enjoy that. The watchfire was started back before, was it Korean? The Civil War.
Civil War.
Civil War. They, at nighttime, they would light a fire. Each side, the lines would light fires. So if any of their wounded or lost people could find their way back to the lines, they could see the fire and
Yeah.
go to
That's
the
right.
fire and get taken care of that
Yeah,
way.
I remember that story.
Yeah, it was impressive, you know. We've always tried to look out for our wounded, lost people.
Don't they have a little museum out there too that the people can come and see?
Yeah, that's generally open on weekends.
Weekend.
Or you can call out there and get an appointment and get a special showing. But they have quite a few items out there, and that goes back to probably Civil War and maybe even before. They have some old McClellan saddles, like the cavalry rode out west
Yeah.
fighting the Indians. They've got old weapons, and then they progressively come right on up through the Civil War, into World War II, and into present day. So they cover all aspects.
Yeah. Do you know who's responsible for that? Who maintains it?
The Allen County Council of Veterans generally is in charge, so they've had different people out there that
Yeah.
have been in charge, but Allen County Council of Veterans is generally the one that oversee it.
You know, there's one thing I don't think a lot of Korean War veterans are familiar with or even know about, is the trip that South Korea pays for. They'll pay for your, 5 days and 6 days and 5 nights
Yeah,
in Korea.
and I think that is probably covered in the Graybeards magazine. Here in the back, they have application forms and what the requirements are and what they take care of and who to contact. So this way, I guess they pretty much help out with the airfare and all expenses paid in Korea for your lodging, your meals. So, and it's lots of the vets have taken advantage of that, and they've really said that they enjoy it, you know.
You got, I think it's really great that they do something like that.
Yeah,
And I understand that they'll pay half the airfare,
I believe
which
that.
covers
I
a lot-
believe that's
lot of
correct.
the
And
expense. Yeah.
makes
They
it
t-
very worthwhile for an individual that, you know, has been there to
Yeah,
go and go back and see that.
Yeah, they take you to, I understand they take you to Panmunjom, and they'll take you to some battlefields.
Mhm.
And I've heard of, while you're that close, you can fly into China then and visit for a day.
Okay, that's an extra tour.
Yeah, that's
an
your-
extra add-on.
At your expense,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know of anybody from our group that has taken advantage of it, but a few years ago, the 45th Division used to meet in Fort Wayne for their reunion. A lot of them from the East Coast and the West Coast, and they figured Fort Wayne's right in the middle, so we'll meet there. And the fellow that headed that up had been on one of those trips and showed the video to us.
Yeah,
And
I
he
remember
has
that.
since passed away, so that kind of put an end to the reunions. But we used to meet every year with them, and we always had one night out that we really enjoyed.
Yeah,
There's some good people
yeah.
you meet in these things.
This Graybeard magazine, I look forward to that.
I
There's
do
some
too.
good articles in there.
I brought some magazines here, and we show some pictures, you know, and put out every other month. So 6 editions a year, and it's quite informative. They tell us what they're doing, what their agenda is, so forth. If they change their bylaws or anything, why they publish it and let us know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then many of the veterans have good articles and pictures they put in there. There's about stories.
Yeah. And any chapter, if they have any information, they send in a little storyline and
Right.
pictures.
We've
what
been
they're
very
doing.
fortunate to get our information in there every
Yeah,
now and
sure.
then.
In the Tell America, they usually have a place for articles about what the chapters are doing with the Tell America program.
If I didn't get that magazine, I would certainly miss it.
I would too.
Right. Oh, yes.
too.
Yeah.
The last few articles, they've been running articles on Father Capon. He was a Catholic priest that served in Korea. And he was advised to leave the area because they knew the Chinese were going to overrun him. And he said, no, there's wounded here that I have to stay with. And he was captured. And the veterans that lived through that are writing these articles on him. And it's just tremendous. I follow them religiously. I think one of the fellows in our group had the privilege of meeting him right before they evacuated. Mm-hmm. And he's up for sainthood.
Yes.
He got a memorial in Kansas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And very interesting articles.
Yeah.
Very outstanding person.
He was
you know,
tremendous.
loved by everybody he met.
They always kind of joked about it. They said he was one of the biggest thieves they had, stealing food.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone I think is interested in the KWVA, if they have a computer, they can type in KWVA and our national
Right.
will come up, and they can get all kinds of information there.
And I would advise them to do so because
Sure.
it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I enjoyed it when Dean had our local in too, because he had a lot of local information.
Sure.
Just a few months ago, I received a call from a fellow up in northern Michigan. And he was a veteran, and he lived originally here in Fort Wayne. And he says, one of the Tell America programs we'd been to, we had pictures in. He says, that's the school I went to. So, glad to see it, you know.
And I also think through the Great Bear, also there's a lot of Korean veterans, when they went into war, they didn't know, you know, they was going over their fight, but a lot of times not for what for, you know, for Korea, but the Gray Beard in our chapter really informs them.
Well, I think
about something
if
like
you interviewed those vets then and now, they would have a much deeper appreciation
Right.
for their effort.
Right.
A lot of
Exactly.
historians are convinced that if we hadn't stopped Russia in Korea, there would have been a third world war, and it would have been nuclear. And they had, you know, they were able to reach the United States, we were able to reach Russia. So there would have been damage.
Well, gentlemen, our time is up. I appreciate you joining us today on the program.
Well, it was a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Good. And for the viewers, I want to thank you for joining us. Anyone that's interested in the Korean War Veterans Association, I'd like to see you at their next meeting. It's at
Post 857, Jim Eby, the VFW on the hill at the end of Main Street
that's right,
at 10 a.m.,
10 a.m.
second Saturday of every month.
Just walk in, tell somebody that you're a visitor, and they'll take care of you.
There'll be a hand to greet you.
Right.
So just remember, freedom is not free. So long till the next time.